with a healthy Giannis, Bucks in 6. If not, Suns in 6.
I think I would lean Suns in 6 either way.
That's interesting. Yeah, and you know what? I'm not even gonna fight that because I could see it. That wouldn't shock me. Like, honestly, the only thing that would shock me in this series is a sweep. That's the only thing that would shock me.
All right, Mort. So let's dive right in. We got the finals set. We don't know the status of Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think that's the biggest question heading into this series. Chris Haynes.
Wait. Is that the biggest question heading into this series? I thought the biggest question heading into this series is, oh my God, is Chris Paul gonna leave Phoenix for New York?
Yeah, I don't think he's focused on that right now. I hope he's not.
Oh no, I very much can guarantee that he's not. And that's not even a source. That's just me being logical. This is a man who's been chasing the NBA Finals for, 15 years? I damn near guarantee you he's not thinking about free agency right now whatsoever.
Yeah, and you were referencing a report from Ian Begley that was poorly aggregated and made the rounds. Basically, all he said was, if Paul does leave the Suns, several agents for point guards in the 2021 free agent class fear New York as a possible landing spot for Paul, noting that Leon Rose, the team president, was Paul's agent. But then he follows with the sentence that provides context that was missing from the aggregation. But again, New York would only be an option for Paul if he and Phoenix didn't reach an agreement. And something tells me, fresh off of his first finals appearance, he's not going to leave Phoenix for the New York Knicks.
Right. And if they win the championship in particularly, of course, it's not because it's my area to talk about these things. I'm not Chris Paul, but it stands to reasons that he would be sticking around. But again, that's none of my business.
Right. Okay. But so assuming the Chris Paul free agency does not hover over the finals,
right?
On court wise, Giannis Antetokounmpo status, he hyperextends the knee in game 4, misses games 5 and 6 of the Hawks series. The Bucks close it out without him. Chris Haynes of Yahoo Sports reported there's belief that Giannis would have been given the green light for a potential game 7 if the Hawks avoided elimination in game 6. Game 7 would have been Monday. Game 1 of the finals is on Tuesday. So there's a chance that Giannis is ready to go for game 1. And if that's the case, right now the Phoenix Suns, according to the FanDuel Sportsbook, are a 5.5 point favorite in game 1. So I don't want to tell you what to do with your money, but if there's a chance Giannis plays in this game, you might put a little bit of money on the Bucks just to see what happens. But let's assume that Giannis misses game 1 at least. I think based on that report, it sounds like he will be back at some point in the finals, knock on wood.
Right.
But if he does miss some time, what do you do if you're the Bucks? Do you keep that same starting 5 that you did in these last 2 games against the Hawks, where Bobby Portis came in and took his place, or do you... I mean, there aren't a ton of other good options, but what would you do if you're in Milwaukee?
Well, see, I've given up on trying to replace PJ Tucker in the lineup. And honestly, I don't really see what he can do in this series, like where he's becomes a necessity to play 32 minutes per game. Like if he's all defense, which at this point he is, okay, you can get him on Jay Crowder, I guess. But is that just... like, what's the point there? I would much rather sacrifice a heavy load of his minutes and get some firepower in there. And when I say firepower, I'm fully recognizing that the Bucks don't really have a whole lot. By firepower this time around, I'm meaning like Pat Connaughton, because that's what they have to replace him with. But no, I would stick with Bobby Portis. I would hope that Bryn Forbes comes into the finals ready to shoot. I think they need that offensive versatility. So I don't have any realistic expectations of PJ Tucker getting out of the starting lineup, so I'm fully expecting him to be there. But I would personally start Pat Connaughton and Bobby Portis instead.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's at least dangerous to assume that what worked against Atlanta will work against Phoenix, because they present 2 very different challenges, especially since Trae Young, missed game 5 and was very hobbled during game 6. And just personnel-wise, they're different teams. Like, Phoenix has not one but two guards that you really need to worry about in Chris Paul and Devin Booker. And then you've got the two forwards in Bridges and Jay Crowder, and then Ayton as well. So how do you see, just in general, Milwaukee matching up defensively with Phoenix? Like, who do you put on, I'm assuming Jrue guards one of Paul and Booker and probably switches between the two. But do you put, do you do Holiday on Paul, Middleton on Booker, and then, Portis and Tucker, or Portis and Connaughton on the two forwards?
Yeah, absolutely I do. I mean, look, so Jay Crowder isn't a guy who slashes a whole lot. He doesn't have great foot speed. So I feel perfectly confident in putting Bobby Portis on Jay Crowder. I mean, what is Jay Crowder going to do?
Right. Mostly spot up in the corner.
Right, exactly. Which is, again, why I wouldn't waste 32 minutes on PJ Tucker. I just don't see... If Jay Crowder was someone who could create off the dribble, then I would see that argument. But he's just a spot-up guy, so put Bobby on him. And yeah, I would... Look, Jrue Holiday, I think, might be the best bet out of anyone in these playoffs to slow down Chris Paul. And I realize some Clippers fans are going to say, well, Pat Bev. No, because Jrue is just bigger. He is so much stronger. He can really get Paul out of his rhythm, I think, or at least he's the guy who stands the best chance to do so. That said, of course, it's Chris Paul. You're not going to force him into some kind of laying an egg or anything of that sort. Paul is going to get his, but it's just going to be a little bit more difficult. What is Jrue, 6'4", 200 pounds or something like that? And then he's just sturdy. He is not going to give up ground whatsoever. So I would definitely want to see him spend the vast majority of the time on Chris Paul. And you're right, he's probably going to switch onto Devin Booker at times as well. I would also start Middleton on Booker because he's got the size advantage. He's got... he doesn't have the speed advantage, but I think he can stick with Booker because Booker isn't one of those overpoweringly athletes who has one of those great first steps and just this tremendous burst of explosion. So I think Middleton can stick with him for the most part. I think this Bucks team is defensively geared up towards being a pretty tough cover for Phoenix, and that's even without Giannis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think the one selling point for keeping Tucker in the starting lineup is that you wouldn't have... You could put him on Booker at times and save Middleton, let Middleton focus more offensively, and you can hide him on one of
Would
McHale.
You trust that, though?
I mean, no, but I don't trust any of these guys to completely shut down Booker.
But I mean... I get PJ Tucker on Durant, for example. And I'm not saying Durant is slow. Durant is still quick, but Booker is smaller and thus just more compact in his movement. So he is by definition quicker. I think PJ would get completely annihilated if he went at Booker. No? Just the ball handling, his ability to create space. Good Lord. I
mean, running Booker around a ton of screens and making PJ Tucker keep up with that or fight through that. If anything, you're probably going to get at least one or two cheap fouls just because, he's going to have to run through a guy and whether it's a flop or they actually fall down, I don't know. But, that's an easy way to pick up, a couple fouls and get closer to the bonus or get him out of the game. But, I mean, it speaks to kind of the difficulty the Bucks will have, at least until Giannis returns, is that they just don't have a super great answer for Devin Booker.
Right. By the way, when Giannis returns, I'm going to say when, because I want that to happen.
Yeah.
I want Giannis on CP3.
Ooh, and then Jrue on Booker?
Yeah. And then Middleton can move up and take Bridges. Again, Bobby Portis could still be in there, and then you get PJ Tucker out of Dodge. And then again, he's not going to be in a danger zone by guarding Jay Crowder. I would love that. Just Giannis on CP. Just completely bury him with length and athleticism. I think that could be so much fun to one. Obviously, it's also a tremendous task to ask of someone who just had a knee issue. So
right.
I'm well aware that it might not happen, but I think just from a tactical perspective, it could be fascinating.
Yeah, and it might actually, 6'0" Chris Paul versus 6'11" Giannis, having, Paul has been burying teams with that mid-range jumper from the right elbow or from the baseline, but is he going to be able to get that off over Giannis's outstretched arms?
I don't think so. Honestly, that might be the one guy he can't. Like, I know, he got it off against Rudy, so people will make that argument, and that's true. Like, he got it off consistently against Rudy and like, I'm blanking on the other, Nikola Jokic as well. Like, he's gotten that shot over people consistently throughout the course of his career. But Giannis might just be quick enough, long enough, and just defensively inclined to understand, okay, I need to be one step closer to him. Whereas Rudy just was slow-footed, same with Jokic. Giannis, I don't think, like, he won't allow that shot. Like, he'll get it off here and there, but it's not going to be a consistent weapon that Paul could go to.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think there is something to that theory. The Atlanta series will be good preparation for having to deal with a problem like Paul in particular, who can kill you both as a scorer and a facilitator. Like, game one, we saw the Buck strategy against Trae Young was let him go for 40, let's stick to the other guys, cut off his passing lanes. So they could try that with Chris Paul as well. Let's let him go off, but we're going to really stick to Devin Booker in particular and Ayton and make it really hard on them. If they could actually execute that strategy is a different question. So, like, that's the thing. They have to basically choose with Chris Paul, which one do you want to stop? Him as a scorer or him as a passer? Because you're probably not going to be able to do both. But you have to do at least one.
I think my overall goal, if I'm Milwaukee and I have Giannis back, is just to rotate Jrue, Middleton, and Giannis onto those two guys, like CP and Devin Booker. Because if you take those two guys out of the game into some capacity, I just don't trust the rest of the players around them to create enough off the dribble. Like, that's not to say that DeAndre Ayton won't have a tremendous game. That's not saying that DeAndre Ayton won't maybe actually win them something by pulling something out of his ass. Like, that could happen. But if you have that trio rotating in whichever way on those two guys, CP and Booker, I mean, that's probably your best bet defensively, I would imagine.
Yeah. So let's actually go to Ayton, because to some extent this is a bad matchup for him since Lopez has the size to deal with him in the post. But the Bucks, as we know, have loved their drop coverage, and against CP and Booker, I don't know how that's going to work out.
Right.
So what do you see the Bucks doing adjustment wise to stick Lopez with Ayton, make sure he doesn't get loose in the post or on rim runs or anything like that, especially in pick and roll, but also make sure he's not dropping so close to the basket that Chris Paul and Devin Booker have their way in the mid-range.
Right. Honestly, I would just not leave Ayton, and then I would have help from the wings come up and challenge the ball handling instead. And then I realized that's a driving kick. I realized that opens the door to wide open corner threes. But we also know that Milwaukee for years have accepted that shot. So it wouldn't shock me if they go that route whatsoever.
Yeah. I mean, there's no great answer. That's the fun thing about going against superstars. Like, you're not going to take away everything. There is no great answer. And even if you force them into the least efficient shot in the game, especially for a guy like Chris Paul, that's not an inefficient shot. So Milwaukee certainly has its defensive challenges, especially until Giannis returns.
But I will say, in half-court situations, if they drop the ball down to Ayton, Brooks stands a pretty good chance there. Not saying that he's going to shut Ayton down. I think Ayton is more talented offensively than we give him credit. But Brook is a very, very large human being. Just to the sheer size alone, I think he's one of those people who really can push DeAndre off of his spots a little bit. So it's going to be so interesting to see how DA is going to adapt. Because if there's one thing we've seen from Ayton here over the course of this year, it's how he's basically seen certain matchups gone, okay, I need to adjust. I need to be more aggressive in this matchup. I need to scale it back in this matchup. He's pretty smart. So I'm very intrigued to see how he plays Lopez and how Lopez decides to work that game of chess right there.
Yeah, so let's go into the Phoenix side defensively against Milwaukee. I mean, again, we don't know when Giannis is returning, but once he does, we talked about this briefly the other day as well, the Suns don't seem to have a great answer for him defensively. So what would you do if you're Phoenix? How would you try to slow down Giannis?
Ayton, I guess, is the best part. Like it's one of those things where you have someone, preferably Mikal Bridges, guard Giannis on the perimeter, and if Giannis gets to step, Ayton just leaves his cover immediately and goes into that matchup, because that's the best that they have. Like Jay Crowder is not going to slow down Giannis. Mikal Bridges alone is not going to slow down Giannis. It's unless, of course, Giannis isn't 100%, which we need to acknowledge is probably in the cards, at least initially, depending on when he returns. So we'll see. But you're right. There isn't that one guy you can say he's going to shut him down. This is going to be a team effort. It's going to be one of those things where they come in with a plan. They know exactly where or who players is carrying the responsibility of Giannis when he's at the mid-range area, like the free throw line extended, if he's in the paint, if he's outside the 3-point line. You have to know which players have that responsibility and then kind of rotate from there. And communication has to be key this one. Like for Phoenix, it's about screaming and yelling and like recognizing patterns, because Giannis can get from point A to point B in a flash, and that means that they need to be very, very quick in their determination, and they need to be very, very quick in their communication. So that's going to trick them a lot initially, and then maybe by game 4 or 5 or whatever, maybe they've got an idea. Maybe they've just gotten so acquainted with Giannis that they know, okay, when he does A, we have to do B.
Right. I mean, they do have, I agree with you that Ayton's probably their best option against him, but they do have some other big bodies they can at least throw his way occasionally, between, Jay Crowder, based on what he did in the last playoffs with Miami against Giannis. Right. Cam Johnson, Dario Saric. We saw what Blake Griffin did in that Nets series, where it's just like, yeah, you're not going to stop him, but if you can just throw size in the paint, maybe you can draw a couple charges. Maybe you can force him to take some of these like mid-range floaters, or, don't let him get right to the rim, basically.
Right. Cam Johnson is an interesting name, I think, because he's got some length. He's bigger than what you think. I mean, when you watch him play, you can see there's some legit size there, but I wonder if he is sturdy enough, because he's not exactly built, if you catch my drift. There isn't a whole bunch of muscles on that frame, and I wonder if that's just going to be an open invitation for Giannis to drive it every single time he's on him, or maybe the length is enough. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, we also don't know, even if Giannis plays. I mean, we saw this with Trae Young last night. Like, you're out on the floor, but coming back from that injury, are you 100% already? Are you going to have the same type of burst and athleticism that you did prior to the injury? Because if not, like if you can goad Giannis into taking those pull-up three-pointers or pull-up mid-range shots, that's a win every time. I don't care if he hits it. Openly encourage him to take that shot. You just don't want him getting directly to the rim. Yeah. So I think we'll see what his physical condition is, but I think in terms of personnel, Phoenix at least has some options to, throw around and mix things up. I think you just, with any great player, you don't want them to get comfortable with what you're doing. You don't want them to know exactly who's going to be guarding them on every possession. I think Phoenix has the luxury of being able to change things on a possession by possession basis and try to keep him off kilter that way.
Right. No, you're right. I mean, let's look at it. You brought up Dario Saric. That's also an interesting name. There's Torrey Craig as well. So you can realistically have a set of Ayton, Bridges, Crowder, Cameron Johnson, and Torrey Craig, and Dario Saric rotating on Giannis, which means maybe you don't beat him off of great individual defensive quality, but maybe you beat him off of just defensive quantity. Just having so many players who have their turn and really don't tire themselves out. So as soon as someone shows a little bit fatigue or been burned a couple times, all right, out you go. Someone else comes in. So you just tire Giannis out with new bodies all the time. Maybe that's the recipe.
Yeah. Yep. Totally agree there. Let's focus on now Jrue, and especially Khris Middleton, who had some mammoth performances in that Hawks series. The Suns do have Mikal Bridges and Jay Crowder. For Middleton, which of those two guys, assuming Crowder isn't on Giannis, which of those two guys do you think is better suited to slow down Khris?
That's a good question. I honestly don't know if you can slow down Middleton to an extent where he's not a factor. I mean, he is so good at getting to his spots. His ball handling is, in my opinion, wildly underrated. So honestly, I'm almost going to basically copy and paste my answer with Giannis. I think it has to be a team effort. I don't think you have one guy or two guys that needs to go on Khris. I think it needs to be one of those times where you rotate guys onto him instead. Mm-hmm. Maybe you should always just have two guys of the aforementioned, 5 players that I brought up on the court at all times that can guard either Middleton or Giannis, and then take it from there, because I don't think, even if you put Bridges on him or Crowder on him, whatever, whoever it is, what are you trying to do with Middleton? Are you trying to get him off the spot? Okay, then you're going to need some size. That's probably going to be Crowder, just in terms of physicality. Mm-hmm. Do you want to challenge his shots? Then it's Bridges with his 7'1" wingspan. It really comes down to what you want to achieve, I think, with Middleton.
Yeah, I would lean Crowder because of the physicality.
Yeah.
I think Bridges has gotten bodied a little bit in the playoffs, and I think that's probably the biggest thing that he needs to work on this offseason. Skill development, of course, but I think just bulking up a little more.
Skill development, similar to one Ben Simmons.
Yeah. I would lean Crowder whenever he isn't on Giannis, but that just speaks to the importance of Jay Crowder in this matchup, I think. Having to defend both of their top options and being one of the best weapons to do so. I mean,
and being able to hit threes.
Yeah, right. Well, he did in Game 6 of the Clippers series, right?
Yeah, but I'm talking about over the course of a full series. If he asserts himself defensively and he is gassed and those shots are coming up short, that's going to be an issue. This has to be a two-way performance by Jay Crowder throughout all 7 games if we go that far.
Well, that's actually a good way to seg into. We can talk, we know the stars on both of these teams. Giannis, Jrue, Khris, CP3, Booker, Ayton. Let's talk about some potential X factors for each side. I think for Phoenix, it's probably Jay Crowder, right?
Yeah, him or Mikal Bridges, I think.
Yeah, we are due for a big Bridges game. We haven't had one in a while.
Yeah, and he shot 50% from the field or 51% from the field against the Clippers, but it was on low volume and he hasn't really looked all that confident. So I think that he's one of those names as well. And then maybe also Cameron Payne is going to be an X factor, just coming in off the bench and putting up 12 and 5, something on all those lines. That's going to be a very necessary boost for them. And honestly, when I look at the Suns roster, that's the one concern I have for them going into these finals, and it is offense. Do they have enough? Do they have enough to just generate those shots? Maybe, but I'm not entirely sure, because we've talked about this before with Jay Crowder being an inconsistent offensive performer. We've just talked about Mikal Bridges. There's also a significant ceiling to what Cam Johnson can do offensively. Cameron Payne is not a 20-point scorer, but he is a guy who comes in and produces in limited minutes. But he too has this tendency once in a while to just go MIA. So do you have enough in the main 3 of Booker, Ayton, and Paul to the point where you won't necessarily have to rely on the rest of them? I don't think so.
Yeah, no, Cameron Payne's a great shout, because if one thing got exposed, especially without Giannis and without Dante DiVincenzo, who it will go under the radar that he is missing from this Bucks team, but he provides better balance in the sense that without him, they have to go digging deeper into their bench just to fill out their starting lineup. And now their bench is just kind of flimsy. I don't really trust anyone until Giannis comes back. Then Bobby Portis will probably move to the bench again, and I trust him. But I trust Pat Connaughton. I don't trust Jeff Teague. Bryn Forbes has been hit or miss since that Miami series, but I don't know that I who stops Cameron Payne? Like in the minutes that Jrue or Khris is off the floor, and you're playing if Bud goes with Jeff Teague against Cameron Payne is going to have a effing field day.
Can we just appreciate that we are going into the NBA Finals and you just said who can stop Cameron Payne?
I mean, considering how well he's played in the playoffs?
No, I agree with you, but can we just appreciate where we are?
the absurdity of Cameron Payne sudden. It's honestly like these are the finals that this pandemic season deserves.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. No, but you're right. You're right. I mean, basically, if things unfold the way we talked about here, Cameron Payne should have so many opportunities to take open shots and get himself involved offensively. As crazy as this sounds, Cameron Payne could be the player who determines the outcome of an NBA. And I'm not even joking. This is just where we are. This is, oh my God, this is insane. I love it. I love this so much. Yeah.
Well, I mean, my X Factor moving to Milwaukee, more like Bobby Portis, sure.
Yeah,
PJ Tucker, sure. But like, it might be Mike Budenholzer.
Oh, now you're cheating going with a non-player. That's fair. I agree with that. Yeah, if Mike Budenholzer has a good series and actually shows that he is an elite coach for which he hasn't so far, yeah, I would agree that he's probably going to be the difference maker.
Right, because like Monty Williams is going into these finals, I've been saying this for a while, but I really genuinely believe Monty Williams versus Bud is the biggest mismatch in this series.
I don't disagree with you. Yeah, Monty Williams, I think, is going to coach the pants off of Bud at least 1 or 2 games.
Right, and I mean, that's all it takes. Like we saw in Game 2 of that Clippers-Suns series, where you draw up the alley-oop, and that's the difference between winning that game and losing that game. And like the Clippers, despite being without Kawhi, instead of going down 3-1, very easily could have been up 3-1 in that series. Like the margins are so thin when you get this deep into the playoffs and your teams are this evenly matched. So, if Mike Budenholzer messes around with Jeff Teague minutes against Cameron Payne and Cameron Payne lights him up for like 8 quick points, that doesn't sound like a lot, and maybe that's not the story of the game. But again, like every single possession matters. And these things build up over time.
Yeah.
So how Bud, I mean, like, the answer might be Jrue just needs to play all 48 minutes. But I don't think he's going to do that. At least at the start of the series.
Right. No, you're right. You're right. I think the main difference between Bud and Monty Williams is really that Monty isn't afraid to do things. Like, he's got some guts. I think Bud is a little bit more conservative in the sense that, well, let's scale it back. Let's go back to norm. Like, let's not really be all that progressive and active in doing something. Whereas Monty is just, hey, you know what? I'm seeing a chance to do something crazy. Let's go for it. And I think sometimes that mentality is your best friend because it forces you to think differently. It catches your opponent off guard. So it's going to be very, very, very exciting to see moving forward which of the two is going to come out and lay it all out on the floor. Because these are the NBA Finals, baby. You don't get a chance to play timid.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess the concern from Phoenix's end in that regard is like, do they get so overhyped about like, this is our best chance to win Chris Paul a ring? But I don't think so. I think Monty will keep his team more level-headed. Whereas, because I mean, the Bucks are going to have the same thing. Like, we can finally win Giannis a ring. We can finally win Jrue a ring. We can finally win Khris a ring. So, there's that newcomer aspect for both sides here. It's not like this is LeBron James' 11th finals and we can win him his 5th ring. Like, who gives a damn? Yeah. It's both teams are going to be hyped up to that extent going into this series.
Well, I don't think anyone on the rosters have a championship ring. I think NBA's Twitter put up something about that. I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm pretty certain that no player on either roster has a championship ring.
Wow. Oh, that's interesting. Huh. All right. Well, that could be another thing too. Like, which coach has their team more ready for this stage.
Right.
Because, it's when the whistle blows, it's still just a basketball game, but we see it oftentimes, especially early in series, like you just get so swept up in everything that's around the finals. This is, we're 4 wins away. I trust Monty again more than I do Bud in that regard.
Yeah. Can we just appreciate as well, though, that this became a Milwaukee Phoenix series and not, Los Angeles, Brooklyn, for example, like that we've all heard all the big market slander for so long. We've all heard the Knicks fans and Lakers fans going on and on and on about all their advantages and how great they are, yada, yada, yada. And now we have a team from Wisconsin and a team from Arizona going at it. I mean, you know what? I appreciate that. I love that. That is what's great about this league, I think, where talent wins out. That talent doesn't care about market. If you're the better team, you're going to make it. And right now, we're seeing two teams that have just been so impressive all year long. And they're at the mountaintop right now trying to figure out just who's going to take that final step. I absolutely love this so much.
So let's go into prediction time, Mort.
Yep.
The Phoenix Suns, according to FanDuel, are slightly favored to win this series. They are minus 175. The Bucks are plus 140. I'm assuming that is in large part due to the uncertainty over Giannis. I would guess if you knew Giannis was healthy and going into game 1, the Bucks would probably be slight favors in this series. Who do you see winning and in how many games?
Yeah, so I am in line with what you just said. So if Giannis was fully healthy, 100% healthy for the entirety of the series, I'm going Milwaukee in probably 6. But if he's not, like if he misses at least a couple of games, and then if he's back, he's playing like 40%, 50%, 60% of what he is, then I think it goes Phoenix in 6. I would definitely be very shocked to see half a version of Giannis make it all the way through. So that's basically where I am. I know I'm not picking something with absolute certainty here, but we also have to realize that we're in a pretty weird spot with Giannis not really knowing where he's at. So that's going to be my answer. With a healthy Giannis, Bucks in 6. If not, Suns in 6.
I think I would lean Suns in 6 either way.
That's interesting. Yeah, and you know what? I'm not even gonna fight that because I could see it. That wouldn't shock me. Like honestly, the only thing that would shock me in this series is a sweep. That's the only thing that would shock me.
Yeah, I think these teams are pretty evenly matched. I think it's going to be a great series. Again, this is like the absolute nightmare scenario from a TV executive standpoint, but it shouldn't be. Like this is, we're going to hear nothing but like market talk for the next 2 weeks. And it's stupid because like, just because these teams are from Phoenix and Milwaukee, we have the 2-time MVP. We have one of the greatest point guards in NBA history. We have a young rising star in Devin Booker. We have like incredible all-star caliber, I don't want to say role players, but like sidekicks in Middleton and Jrue Holiday. We have DeAndre Ayton, who is becoming one of the best young centers in the game. Like there are so many great players here. Let's build these guys up.
Yeah.
Instead of just like crying that LeBron and Steph aren't in the finals.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Like I like seeing new blood. Trae Young, hit this run through the playoffs for the Hawks was awesome. Like it was super fun. I don't remember a fun storyline like this for a while just because it's been the same names over and over again. But if you want to attract more fan interest and establish more parity, which the NBA ostensibly wants to do, this is the way to do it.
Yep. I completely agree. For crying out loud, I've been writing about this for Forbes. So yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So before we move on to the Bye Felicias, I also want to hit on NBA Finals MVP if you had to choose right now. So these odds are also from FanDuel. Chris Paul is currently the favorite at plus 170. Devin Booker is plus 270. Giannis is plus 350. Middleton plus 650. Holiday plus 1,000. After that, Ayton's plus 2,500. And Brook Lopez plus 13,000. You could please go with the wild card of Brook Lopez MVP Finals MVP.
Can we talk about something? Because let's say that Phoenix is going to win this series, and let's say that Devin Booker has played objectively better. I still feel like Chris Paul is going to win it because it's going to be legacy thing and whatnot. And like we've already seen in 2015 how Andre Iguodala won the Finals MVP over Steph, which was ridiculous. It was so dumb. Is it fair to go that route? I mean, what if Devin Booker never makes it back to the NBA Finals after this year? And let's say he was the best player in the finals, should have won that MVP, and didn't. It just seems to me that is unfair that you want to go with a narrative or legacy, because you and I agree that it would seem like that NBA media members could pick Chris Paul just because of legacy issues or factors.
I think it would have to, it's hard to say now going into the series. If Devin Booker so soundly outplayed Chris Paul, if Chris Paul was terrible and they won in spite of him, which I don't think is going to happen.
Right.
But, if he's fine, but doesn't have one of these 40-point, just absolutely tears a team apart for a game, and Booker is going off for 40 plus every game. I think if there's that big of a gap, the media will rightfully give Devin Booker MVP. Right. But I agree with you that if it's close, I wouldn't be surprised if, the intangibles end up pushing people to Chris Paul. Chris Paul's leadership is what won him the MVP or what won this team the finals.
I'm just saying, if Devin Booker ends up averaging, 28, 6, and 6, and has a true shooting percentage of 60, and Paul is 17 points, 8 assists, 5 rebounds or something along those lines, and it goes to Paul, come on.
Yeah. I mean, we'll have to see how it plays out. I think I'm not surprised that he is the favorite to win it going into the series for the narrative reasons, especially, and also just, the way Booker's been kind of struggling since he broke his nose 15 times. In terms of efficiency, at least.
Right.
And I think, it's just going to be interesting to see how, again, I don't think the Bucks have a great answer for Booker unless it's Jrue. Whereas I think, Jrue on Khris or Giannis on Khris, as you mentioned earlier, could work pretty well. Right. So it feels like if anyone's going to win from just pure on-court perspective, Booker is probably a better bet than Paul, but I wouldn't be surprised if, the narrative. And same with Giannis and Middleton. Giannis has better odds than Middleton right now, but we just saw what Middleton can do without Giannis. He has these monster quarters, monster halves. If Giannis isn't fully healthy, again, if he plays but he's not his MVP self, they're going to have to lean more heavily on that supporting cast. Middleton at plus 650 might not be the craziest bet right now.
I agree with you. I mean, honestly, I'm at the point where I think next year the Bucks should start experimenting with putting the ball into Khris Middleton's hands and make him the key decision maker instead of Giannis. Not saying you're diminishing Giannis's role by any stretch. You're just retooling it. You're changing it. But I completely agree with you. If 60% of Giannis is there and they win that series, which I would be surprised if they did under those circumstances, then Khris Middleton should be racing the Bill Russell Award up. Yeah.
Do you see a scenario where a player from the losing team could still win MVP? What if the Bucks win but Chris Paul's still MVP?
Oh God, I would be so upset. I would be so upset. No, we had that thing with LeBron a couple years ago where that was a legitimate conversation, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm still glad it didn't happen. I still think that's a weird one, honestly.
Yeah.
I think the only reason that it was a split opinion was because it was LeBron. All the LeBron fans came out and said, I think this is a great idea.
Right.
But no, I think it needs to be from the winning side. Absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree unless, again, unless it is just such a monster performance.
Yeah, 50, 20, and 20, then we can talk about it.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't see that from anyone on either side.
Right, agreed.